no way, I'm staying here. So then Gorton just got in Quinn's head and said, just bench this guy, let him be miserable so he could say, all right, I'll accept the trade. Because he didn't want him anymore, wants to clear that money off the cap. And I think Justin's point originally, which was that, Igor goes down, I don't really see why you're not playing Henrik. You played him, I think he got one start. He got lit up because he hadn't played in weeks. And, the team was really coming on strong here. And if they wanted to get into the playoffs, Justin, I think I would have been more comfortable going with Henrik, have him go, 3-4 starts in a row and just see what happens. But obviously, Quinn didn't think that. So how do you feel about Quinn's coaching style? And do you think this is still the guy for the job here, or is he really wearing on his players? Obviously, he comes from college, so he's more used to the younger guys, and I think that's been the issue with someone like Henrik Lundqvist, where he's not usually used to dealing with a superstar veteran. He's used to having it his way because in college, he's the boss.
I guess I'll kind of go back to what you mentioned, a little bit of the conspiracy theory and the things about Jeff Gorton. I think, Nick, you and I disagree. I think Gorton was actually probably one of the main reasons why this team had the run they did, even when Glenn Sather was still GM and president. I actually believe Gorton was, whether he was assistant GM or other points, he's been a pro scout with the Rangers. He's been with the organization quite a bit of time. I think he's been a huge part of why the team had success. And yes, we can nitpick a couple moves here and there that weren't great, but I think all in all, he has done a fine job with this team. I don't know if I have never heard from credible sources anything related to whether he really wanted Hank gone and this was something they were going to do to ruin him. That doesn't seem consistent with anything Gorton or the Rangers have done. And quite frankly, I don't think Glenn Sather or JD would have let that happen as either of them on their watch where they were involved. But otherwise, at the end of the day, when you talk about David Quinn, yes, it is different, 100%. You are dead on. It is very different coaching professionals versus coaching veterans. I don't know that this has I don't know how much impact that has on it. There's a bunch of other veterans on the team that have responded very well to David Quinn's coaching style, and a bunch of other guys that have really, really enjoyed playing for him.
Mika,
Chris Kreider, other guys that have been around the league for a long time. So I don't really, there's not really any other supporting evidence of players really having an issue with Quinn's style. But to your point, he's admitted himself, it's different coaching in the NHL at professionals than it is when you are a lot more of a paternal figure as a college coach than you are for certain as an NHL coach. And you, Nick, you said it well. You run the complete show when you're a college coach. Very, very different from his perspective as a head coach.
And, at this point, I want to welcome my co-host, 18 minutes into the show. It's been great now having to hear him. But, Joe, welcome in. Joe, we're just talking about Quinn, and I know your very strong views on him. Do you think he's the guy for the job still?
Through the first year or so, and what's up, guys? How are you?
Hey, Joe.
How's it go, Joe?
Thanks for having us.
You got it. So, through the first year or so, I was kind of having my doubts only because of the way Quinn was handling certain situations on the team. The young players on the team, I felt like, were fighting through inconsistencies, and there were a bunch of examples of this, maybe more prominently with a guy like Pavel Buchnevich. But for the last couple of weeks, right before we had that unfortunate shutdown of the season due to the coronavirus stuff, it felt like the Rangers were really, really starting to get into another gear. And it kind of felt like a lot of the foundational work that Quinn was doing over the last couple year or so was actually finally starting to work. So temporarily, I have flipped my opinion on him. I still don't know if he's necessarily the right head coach for the future of this team. But the improvements, and there were a lot of improvements, and this team got better as the season went along this year. Based on what I saw, the body of work that he started the season with, up all the way up until this point, and the play you've seen from not only Panarin and Zibanejad, but a lot of other secondary guys as well. And we've seen really, really great play from the young players this season, like Adam Fox. And so at the beginning, I wasn't entirely sold. I'm still not sold on it, but my opinion has changed. I've eased up, and I definitely think he's doing a good job.
Yeah, and Justin, I mean, I still miss John Tortorella. I got the honor to sit in one of his press conferences at MSG, and it was so hard not to laugh because this guy is just passionate, and it's a real shame. I mean, you were talking recently about his great teams and how they just didn't get the job done, but Tortorella, I think, should get a lot of credit for turning some things around here with the Rangers organization.
Oh, yeah. I agree with that 100%. Torts, I mean, if you look at the history of the Rangers in the last 10 to 15 years, I mean, it was really when Torts came to the organization, again, he really had changed the culture. I mean, he made us a very hardworking and scrappy team. He set the foundation in place for all those runs that followed. If I remember correctly, the team that made it to the finals and lost to the Kings, I believe that was AV's first year coaching the team. And I think you have, even though AV was the coach, you certainly had the Tortorella influence as he provided a lot of the structure the year before that we were then able to build from when AV came on board. But in terms of Quinn, it seemed like Quinn was the right type of coach for the team that we had. Our time with AV seemed to have run its course. And yeah, we were looking for someone who had a lot of the strengths that Torts brought to the table. Someone who could, work with young players and hold players really accountable. I mean, AV's style was more of a kind of laissez-faire, like trust the players to take care of themselves, whereas Torts held players more accountable. So I think Quinn is coming back in, and I think he is creating the structure and culture of accountability again that we need. I mean, only time will tell if he is the right coach. Only time will tell that when these guys get older, will we need to bring in essentially a new AV, or can Quinn be that guy that takes us to the finals and to a championship? We're only in year 2. I mean, it's still too premature, but I think we're very, very impressed where this team ended the season before the break. I mean, I don't think we could say enough good things about where this team ended up. And don't forget that we lost Kreids for a while. And I mean, Mika was out for 15 games earlier in the season. Kreids missed 10 or so games at the end of the season. He's been balancing the goalie, the goalie juggling act. So it's very, very impressive that this team is where it is today, given the adversity they've dealt with this year.
Joe, what are the Rangers waiting for? Why isn't Chris Kreider named captain yet? What's going on?
Well, I think the next captain will be Zibanejad. Although Kreider signed the contract, so it's very likely. But I think for the face of the franchise that they're looking for, they might lean in that direction just a little bit more. But those two guys are unquestionably the two of the better players on the team and the two likely de facto leaders once we see the Rangers finally move on from Henrik Lundqvist. It was likely going to be either this offseason or his contract runs out after another year from now. So, yeah, to me, I think they're going to give it to Zibanejad. I would love to see Kreider get it. Kreider, I think, is more of like the sentimental choice, only because of the amount of love and admiration he's built with the fan base over the course of the last 8 years. But something still tells me it'll be Mika. But we'll see. They're both great choices.
Dan, any thoughts on the captaincy for the Rangers? I think the main thing they got to do here is take the A off Staal. Get rid of him. I mean, he's been stalling this team for years now. And they added his brother. That was another disaster. Got to get rid of Staal. He's horrendous. But what do you think on that? But maybe how they haven't moved on from Staal yet. And who do you think should be the captain?
I disagree with you on Marc Staal. Much like any other defenseman, as they get older, you notice a loss in foot speed, which certainly was the case. Marc battled a lot of injuries. Yes, looking now, his contract is more than we'd want it to be, but you can't even statistically make the argument that Marc Staal is what's been holding this team back. He is what he is, Nick. He's a stay-at-home defenseman with long reach, great stick positioning, always is good on gaps, but he's not a top pair D. And over the last couple of years, because we haven't truly had top pair D guys, since that run to the Cup in 2014-15, when all of our guys were firing on all cylinders, we've been putting Marc in a position, asking him to do more than he should be doing, and in some ways he's been exposed. But anyway, to say I have no problems with Marc Staal. I think he's been a reliable New York Ranger. Obviously, I wish his contract was a little bit friendlier at this point in his career, but it's not. On the captaincy issue, my pick would be Chris. Joe, I like what you said. I think either Chris or Mika are good choices. You can't go wrong with either. But the thing on Kreider is you hear a lot more about Kreider's investment in younger players in the offseason. Guys going working out with him, guys staying at his place. Him driving into the rink with certain players. It just seems like that part is pretty natural to Kreider. He really does invest in that next gen, quite I think proficiently. And I think too, one of the things that's really, at least for me, been really obvious or evident is the Rangers had a core group of leaders. And I'd probably say we underestimated or underrated Brad Richards' leadership qualities when he was with the Rangers during that run. Between Brad Richards and Marty St. Louis and Step, we had some really, really strong leaders in the room. And when those guys started to leave the team, I love Mac, but I don't think Mac was the guy. I don't think McDonough was that first leader. And then, of course, Mac ends up being moved, and we're in the position we're in now. I think if you look back at the success of some of those leaders, the Richard St. Louis Stepan type, Kreider to me is more like that. He's probably the right choice. But if it ends up going to Mika, Joe, as you said, you can't go wrong with that either. It's exciting to know that those two guys specifically are going to be part of this rebuild for the next many years.
Yeah, just to counterpoint your opinion on Staal, I think a lot of the Rangers fan base at this point simply has the fatigue. And at least with a guy like Dan Girardi, we saw the Rangers take a proactive step a couple years ago, and they said, okay, we need to do something. We can't have both these guys around here. So it was Dan Girardi, the guy they bought out, and they figured that in order to ease the salary cap situation to the best of their abilities, it would be that they would keep Marc Staal around and continue to play him. And we're kind of seeing what's happening with Lundqvist, right? So we had Shesterkin in net. He's playing very well. They've had Georgiev play very well. It has allowed them to see the light at the end of the tunnel in regard to Lundqvist. Maybe they trade him. Maybe they do buy him out. I think we've reached that point with Marc Staal, because I think the Rangers, even though they traded Brady Shea, who was a left-handed defender at the deadline, we're seeing a plethora of potential young talent, guys who could really, really be a part of the core solution for the Rangers on the left side within the next year or two. We've seen that with some of the guys they brought up, and now the fact that Keandre Miller, who was the Rangers' second first-round draft pick back in 2018, he is now part of the organization. So he was at Wisconsin the last 2 years. He's going to be a part of the Rangers. It was going to be interesting to see what would happen in camp, but now we don't know when camp is going to be just because of all the situations. And do they continue the season with the tight schedule and the few cities? Do they have the postseason? How long is the off season? Does the season start in November? Does it start in December? Does it start next year? We don't know that, but it seems to me that the fatigue had really set in the last two seasons with Staal. And, I mean, I totally understand where people are coming from, especially like Nick, because Nick goes back and he looks at all those Rangers short shortcomings, and he says, all right, we kept Staal on for leadership, and he hasn't really been great on the